Hey there, everybody. It was a pretty interesting day today. I will say that. It all started when I woke up at around, I believe it was like 8 o'clock sharp, around there. Now, when I got up, it was time to do some eating. And what kind of eating are we talking about here? Well, if I'm remembering correctly, it was the leftover chorizo, eggs, and potatoes from yesterday. And then after that, it was some more eggs, I'm pretty sure, and some buttered toast. The toast was alright, although I wish it was a little more crunchy, if I'm being honest. And then afterwards, it was time to go take a shower. Because, guys, hygiene is very important. So that's exactly what I did. After hygiene, got out of the shower, put on some deodorant, and put on my clothes. And then I tried to play a little of a game called Battlefield 5 on my PlayStation 4 on that screen behind me. Widescreen CRT, one of the last models made before they discontinued cathode ray tubes entirely. I got it for $60 on eBay for historical value. Also, I think it's pretty cool the fact they made widescreen CRTs before they just ultimately killed the entire technology off around the mid 2000s. Anyways, I could not play Battlefield 5. And you know why? The game is always online, which means you need to have it connected to the internet if you want to play a game. At least that's what it seemed like, because for some reason it said, want to update? You can't play the game online if you don't update it. And I'm like, I guess. So I clicked the update button and it only lets me go online. And it didn't matter how long I waited, like 3 minutes, 4 minutes. My usual like cutoff point for waiting for any online connection is like 5 minutes max. And it was taking way too long, and I wasn't getting any results. And I mean, I don't even like online experiences anyway. I'm more of a single player kind of guy, if I'm being honest. So I just thought, this sucks. So dropped out of the game and I closed the application and I deleted it. Because why should I have a game downloaded on my system that I can't even play because it's an always online game, anyways? That the online doesn't even work, at least when I tested it. Disappointing. Anyways, enough whining about that. I decided to see if one of my YouTube channels that I follow posted any new videos. One of them, named Jesse Michaels, which goes under another name, American Alchemy, within the Jesse Michaels channel, posted a new video where he was interviewing a CEO of a program called Skywatchers, where apparently former military crew members who have the ability to perform psionics, which is some form of psionic ability with, you know, like using their mind to basically summon UFOs. And it sounds absolute bananas and crazy, but apparently the guy who's being interviewed says like they're able to call them on command and record them and put data out there about what they're seeing. And they even like have a UAP whistle blowing or dog whistle sound to attract the crafts. But whenever they try to intercept them or get them to land, they just immediately disappear again. So, you know, as cool or as interesting or as bizarre as all of this sounds, if there's no hard evidence, like if we can't get a 4K high definition, like super up close shot of these craft, where we can or have them land and then have the occupants describe how the technology works in a way where scientists can replicate what they're seeing, it all just is gonna be smoke and mirrors. But I mean, it was really interesting because the guy being interviewed on the Jesse Michaels YouTube channel was seemed to be pretty credible and knowledgeable, but at the same time, you're using people's psionic abilities like a la Stranger Things. You're using like specific sound frequencies to attract UAP. It just sounds like the stuff of science fiction, if I'm being honest, just to gather attention, make a quick buck. But maybe we'll get real results really soon, and heck, who knows? Maybe they'll have one of them crafts land and have a being walk up and say, "Hey guys, we're real. Okay, bye." And they go back in their craft and shoot away. doing who knows what. That would be funny. Anyways, after watching that, it was time to get dressed for work, and that's what I did. But my mom wanted my input on this project she's now working on, where she wants to get a curtain to go over the back of our patio in the back of our house, so we could have like a sunroof that keeps the sun from hitting people when they want to relax outside next to the pool. She was telling me her plans and what she plans on doing, and how she found someone on OfferUp selling what she believed would be the perfect sized blanket to perform the duties she was seeking to perform, which was to put the sunroof over and have shade for all. So I was like, that's pretty interesting. And then afterwards, I needed to go to work. So that's exactly what I did. Now, when I arrived at work, the first hour was spent doing carts. Pretty chill, pretty nice. I always like to sing like a few hymns or songs while I'm doing my thing, and or simply just not think at all. Just have like a completely empty like mind where I'm just like pushing carts and doing that. I find it very relaxing. Afterwards, it was time to do bagging, and so I was doing bagging with a great attitude, as always. Always have a good attitude when you're working, because you could be at home unemployed, living in your parents' basement, and not contributing to society. So I certainly prefer the former rather than the latter, because at least I'm making some kind of a difference in people's lives. But anyways, yeah, it was pretty interesting, I would say. One of the reasons why was because I was talking with one of my coworkers about this alien abduction project that I have been working on for quite a while now. I told him my process of taking a transcript from a UFO channel called Preston Dennett, one of his many onboard human encounter video stories. I basically copy and pasted the transcript that was generated onto ChatGPT and asked it to rewrite it into more of a narrative style way of telling the story instead of a documentarian style of telling the story, so I could better visualize what was going on in the plot. I found a story that I thought was quite interesting, and so I took that story and I made storyboards about it. I got the OR image generation software tool, and I had that transform those storyboards into what looked like fully fleshed out live action screenshots, which was pretty cool. And then I used Kling AI and carefully directed it using those screenshots to create motion, to have a consistent story with consistent characters that tells something that will hopefully be very entertaining, engaging, and interesting. So I'm really looking forward to that. He seemed to think it was fairly interesting, although I can't read his mind, but he seemed interested in my exact process for using artificial intelligence and how I'm approaching the storytelling. Yeah, so that was that. And then it was time to go for lunch. So I went home for lunch and I had leftover spaghetti and meatballs. And I probably shouldn't have this every time I have lunch, but I usually have a dessert afterwards. And today's dessert, I actually, when I got Eggo waffles, our family friend wanted me to split it in half so she could have half of the Eggos in the box and I could have the other half. I was like, okay. But then she wouldn't be eating those half for like a good 2 weeks since we did that. So I asked her, hey, could we split the Eggo price that we split in half so I can have half of what you have? And they're like, sure. And so that's exactly what I did. Yeah, pretty good. I enjoyed those waffles. Every bite was delicious. And then after that, it was time to go back to work. Of course, as I was making lunch, my mom was telling me all about the project she was working on, and she had the sunroof set up. She got it. The problem with sunroof, though, is that it wasn't really big enough to stretch over the back patio, so she was thinking about doing some adjustments for next time I arrived back. So then drove back to work, and it was 3 hours of various different activities, from bagging to wiping down the check stands, to doing go backs, to throwing food in the compost. And here's where the story takes somewhat of an interesting turn. I was asked to take artichoke dip out into the compost in the produce area. And so I did just that. And after I did that, one of the people who worked there stopped me and asked if my mom is of a certain profession. And I said yes. And then she said, "No way, my dad works with your mom." And I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting. Cool. What a weird coincidence." And I'm like, "I know, right? That's strange and wild." And I was like, "I agree." So yeah, after that, I went back to the front end. I continued bagging, and then once the bagging had been completed, it was time to do lot. Now, I remember before doing lot, I was being goofy with one of my coworkers, and by that I mean they were talking about, like, I don't know, we somehow got into this conversation about starting a rap band. I'm trying to think of different names for it. And we came up with the name like the Door Dashers, where we're gonna dash to your doors or something like that. And it would be like raps based around ordering meals from DoorDash. Yeah, interesting, weird stuff like that. But anyways, yeah, and I almost forgot. On both of my breaks, I did breathing exercises, which were very relaxing and soothing, and I'd say fairly profound. I noticed that on my second breathing exercise I did on my second break, I did start seeing what looked to be like an outline of a face. And I'm not sure exactly what that was, but it certainly was interesting. But anyways, the last hour was spent karting, and throughout the last hour, normally when I get really bored during the last hour, I like look up into the sky and like I'm hoping to see something unusual because of my whole, UFO obsession. I'm like, I sure hope I see a UFO today. No UFOs, but yeah, I always look at the sky in hopes that maybe a craft will appear one day. Maybe. But anyways, yeah, I finished off pushing carts, singing some songs. I sang the Lady from Impanita, I think. Do 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 do. Yeah, that one. And then I remember singing the Brazil one. Do 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 do. Yeah, that one. And yeah, I think that was it. Then I drove home while listening to nostalgic old music I used to listen to when I was younger. And when I arrived, my mom had finished putting up a makeshift gazebo in the back of our house. Basically, she got that sunroof material that was too small and wrapped it around this metal gazebo makeshift railing and put a bunch of Christmas lights wrapped around it with this what basically amounted to like glowing ribbons tying everything together. It certainly looked very interesting. I would say afterwards we watched a Y-Files about the Shadow Man, which was pretty interesting. It's basically about people who witness a supernatural being who is super spooky and scary. And finally, after all of that, I took my vitamins, I brushed my teeth, my mom played a spooky prank on me, and that will do it for this episode. I recorded this after brushing my teeth, by the way. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, everybody.